I just finished the 2024 Steamboat Gravel Black Course, which was shortened to 125 miles from the original 141 due to some controversy over routes conflicting with ranching activities. So this picture was taken very early in the race. I'm on a 2XL Canyon Grizzle with Hunt 40mm carbon wheels and Challenge Getaway 40mm tires. These are reputed to be the fastest tire with knobs over the entire contact patch. So let's go over my hydration setup. I use bottle cage extenders to put the bottles in reach. I store my tools under the bottles in small gear bags. Doing this allows me to mount 2 bottle cages behind the saddle using a Rock Bros mount. Finally, I'm wearing a Camelback, which has a 1.5 liter bladder and some other room for storing food and other items. So now for nutrition. I make my own energy gel. I'll put an info card above if you want to see the ingredients. I carried 850 grams of carbs in 12 3.5 ounce energy flasks. So all in, that food weighed about 4 pounds. I'm a big guy, so 4 pounds doesn't really cost me that much, but it's not nothing. I could fit 8 flasks in this top tube bag, which is made by Restrap, and it goes almost the whole length of the top tube. The extra flasks are in my Camelback, and that screwed me later, which I'll explain. So why am I going to all this trouble? I'm trying to skip as many aid stations as possible. On a course of this length, I should be able to put 15 to 30 minutes into a rider that stops at some or all the aid stations. So you probably came here to see how everything went to crap for me. So do you see something missing about in this picture about 20 miles down the road? Yep, my Rock Bros saddle bottle cage mount is gone. Half the screws fell out after less than 5 miles of gravel, and I tightened these screws before the race. So I had to stop at the first aid station and spend a minute or two removing the mount and then just leaving it there for someone to maybe salvage. Obviously, I can't recommend the Rock Bros mount for gravel use. In a time trial bike or whatever, that's fine, but maybe some Loctite would have held these screws in place. But I'm not going to try that approach again. I'll put the extra bottles somewhere else on the frame. So unfortunately, the Rock Bros mount wasn't the only reason that I had to stop at the first aid. A few weeks earlier, a dog actually bit my rear tire and put a couple punctures in it. So you're probably asking, why the hell am I racing on a tire that a dog bit? Number one, I was on vacation for a couple weeks right before the race. Number two, I'm just lazy. And number three, the damn thing seemed to seal up pretty well. So I figured, why not? I'll race on it. So Murphy's Law will state that the tire is going to go totally flat on race day, and that is what happened. I was probably at 10 PSI by the time I reached aid 1, and at 10 PSI again by the time I reached aid 2, and repeat the same for aid 3. I used Vittoria tire inserts, so the tire never went completely flat, but it was costing me serious watts, especially on the flats. So my grand plan was to skip the first 3 aid station, but in reality, I stopped at all 3 of them, both to fill the water bottles and pump the stupid tire. So I wasted a lot of minutes, at least 5 minutes at each aid station. Very frustrating. So these mechanical issues would have been enough to demoralize me quite a bit. But hey, wait, there's more. I did a shakeout ride 2 days before the race, and my rear derailleur wasn't indexed very well. I couldn't get the barrel to really do anything. So I took it to a local bike shop, thinking they would be able to tweak it and get me up and running pretty quickly. I just needed, a minor fix. So stupidly, I didn't even pre-ride it the day before the race. I just trusted that it would work. Well, by race day, the indexing was still screwed up, and even worse, I could no longer access my lowest gear. So on a flat course, no biggie. But this course has 11,000 feet of elevation gain over 125 miles. So here's a Strava Analytics panel for the most severe climb of the day. That was a half mile with a 13% grade on loose rocky gravel. So to propel my large body up this hill, I averaged 273 watts for 8.5 minutes with an average cadence of 46 RPM. So this is barely cycling. This is weightlifting at this point. A lot of people walk this section, and I honestly think it might have been smarter for me to do that myself. This effort took a lot out of me. It was way more strenuous than simply doing 273 watts for that length of time on the trainer. My threshold's actually, call it 310. So now let's talk about heat. The temperature stayed fairly comfortable for the first 65 miles. But after the third aid station in Hayden at mile 67, we started up the long climb to Dunkley Pass. It consists of 4 separate climbs totaling about 3,000 feet of vertical over 25 miles. So not incredibly severe, but it's a grind. And some of the pitches are in excess of 10%. But it was really the heat that was the issue today. There was a tailwind, which usually I don't ever complain about on the bike, but today it made the climb feel even hotter. So the temperature over this 25-mile stretch ranged from 87 to 97 degrees Fahrenheit on my Wahoo. My hamstrings started intermittently cramping at mile 78. So this put the kibosh on my power output. I basically adjusted my zones downward by 20 watts for the remainder of the race. My bottles were empty, and I was having trouble getting water from the Camelback because the other crap that I had stuffed into the pack was actually squeezing the bladder in a way that constricted flow. So there was an aid station at mile 87, and although I add salt and electrolytes to my nutrition, I was desperate to get more electrolytes to stifle the cramping, maybe some pickle juice, at least some Noon or something like that. But the aid station was out of electrolytes, as were the next 3 aid stations. So past mile 87, no electrolytes for anybody. Obviously, I'm not gonna jump on the race organizers. I know a lot of these people; they're good people. They mean well. I still support the race and happy to volunteer. But man, this sucks. There were a lot of people walking their bikes. A lot of them were probably cramping. Many were just hanging out in the shade due to the heat. I pounded some Coke and hoped I could extract some electrolytes from those and just hope for the best. So somewhere up the climb to Dunkley Pass, I just kind of had to mentally get over the fact that the race had gone off the rails. My goal at that point was simply to finish, to salvage some pride, and kind of pay due respect to the year of disciplined preparation that went into this with the help of my coach, Tom Danielson at CINCH Cycling. I literally started whistling and smiling up the steady grind, and it really did help. I went on to finish on a very hard day, but I did not get my black hat because they ran out of black hats. Grr. A lot of old, slow guys like me were pretty disappointed about that. So, this video has been about complaining about what went wrong. So what went right on the ride? Other than the lack of electrolytes, my fueling system worked fantastically. I never bonked, never had any GI issues, never had to eat any food from the aid stations. And a lot of the other riders complain about a lack of good food at the aid stations, in addition to no electrolytes. Cycling is a power sport. So from 50 minutes out to 140 minutes, I hit my best power numbers for the year. And this includes the Finland gravel race, which is at sea level. So whereas the average elevation of SBT gravel is about 7,500 feet. I tailed off because of the heat and probably went out too hard. My power output was not ideal out past 3 hours, but ideally I would have gone a little easier over the first bit of the race, but I was battling these tire pressure issues and I didn't have my easiest gear for the steep climb, so it was hard to hold back. I can definitely conclude that my structured training was very effective, and I have to give credit to Tom and CINCH for that. Next year, I'll probably return to Steamboat with a 1x gravel bike. It's gotten to the point where the 1xs have more gearing on the low end these days. And I would also like to return with 20 pounds less body fat, but that's a stretch goal. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Hopefully you got a chance to laugh with me a little bit, and even if you laughed at me, that's cool too. So leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. Thanks.